Hi there, and thanks for joining me for this review of X-Transbots Commander Stack. Now, I just want to say up front that this is going to be a bot mode only review. I have a couple of reasons for that. One of which is that I have MP22 and I plan to use that as my alt mode display for Ultra Magnus. So I don't really have much incentive to transform this. The second is that I have seen enough people transforming it online, be it YouTube videos or forums, etc. Seen the horror show that it is to transform it, and seen some sort of tales of woe in terms of breakages, stress marks, paint damage, etc. So you can probably read into that as far as it goes in terms of the usual QC the QC sort of levels for X-Transbots releases. The fact that I'm not going to attempt it on camera or even in this video, tells you all you need to know, really. Apologies if you were hoping for that, but I'm sure there are plenty of other videos floating around that will, be more up your street. But if, like me, you are more of a bot mode guy and you buy these things to display primarily in bot mode, hopefully you'll stick with me while I run through my first impressions out of the box and see how we get on. Anyway, speaking of the box, this is pretty standard X-Transbot stuff, isn't it? Apologies, it doesn't quite fit in my display area because he's a big boy. But yeah, it's a decent enough looking bit of artwork. You've got some nice Autobot City stuff in the background there. Obviously, City Commander, and the name itself, Commander Stack, obviously a reference to the actor Robert Stack, who played him in the movie in '86. On the side there, we just have some more artwork. The back has the now familiar G1 inspired battle scene, along with his tech specs there. I will bring that forward slightly for those of you who like to pause and read these things. So I'll leave it on screen there for a few seconds so you can pause it and have a look at his bio if you so desire. Okay, that's probably enough of that. And then on the side we have his motto, I believe. Sure, yes, that's his motto. So anyway, that's enough for the box. Let's get that out of the way. Inside the box, it comes as no surprise that you'll find a manual, decent sized manual with some nice full color pictures showing you what he should look like in bot mode. I do want to say actually one other thing. Where it says here the transparent eyes are for LED sake, I don't appear to have the transparent eyes. They must have been missed out of my package, which is slightly annoying. But yeah, what are you going to do? It means I can't demonstrate the LED features. I wasn't planning to use them myself. I don't really go for the light up gimmicks or anything like that. But yeah, it is quite annoying. So I might have to contact the retailer and ask for them, just because I've paid for them. But yeah, full color pictures of Magnus in bot mode there. Going on, you have some fairly detailed instructions on how to transform him, and mentions some of the other gimmicks. There are actually voice gimmicks for this. I'll leave this on screen momentarily for you, because if you want to know what he looked like in alt mode and you can't be bothered to look at other videos, and you haven't seen any of the renders or pictures elsewhere, that's what he looks like in alt mode. Very similar to MP22, more sort of toonish, obviously, flatter deco, not as much by way of greeblies on him. I do think he actually has a better truck bed. MP22 just kind of has his legs in there. That looks slightly better. I think actually that looks better all round, to be honest. What I don't quite understand is, going for the toon accuracy that they obviously have with this, why they've included the silver stripe on the cab. That shouldn't be there. And also, while they've gone for the red bumper, they've missed the silver accent in the middle of the bumper, which MP22 has. So all things being equal, I think I'm going to stick with MP22, as I said, for my alt mode. There's not too much in it. And yeah, I think I will leave this mode well enough alone. Again, the back has more bio, tech specs, and battle scenes featuring some of their other characters. You've got Klaatu there. You have their Springer, their Cup. The names of both of which have completely escaped me for the moment. Some of their Stunticons, etc. Anyway, let's move this out of the way. One of the other things you get, as you would expect, is the bio card, the sort of little credit card sized bio. You know, you've seen one, seen them all, haven't you? Not really anything. Obviously comes with his tech specs, slightly easier to read his strength and intelligence levels. Odd that his strength's only a 9 though. But yeah, we'll get that out of the way. What else do we have? Should I do this now or during the actual review of the figure? I tell you what, let's get the figure in and then we can look at some of the accompanying pieces. Here we go. Let me just adjust the camera as well, because he is a big boy, as I said, but I've got it slightly too high there. That'll do, won't it? There we go. I'm moving back slightly so he fits all in the frame. He is a chunky lad. And yeah, that it is Commander Stack. I believe originally this was going to be Citizen Stack 2.0, but they changed the name. And yeah, I mean, first impressions out of the box, honestly, are very favourable in bot mode, at least. It really does look the part. I think I was slightly worried actually beforehand that the colours weren't quite right, but I'm really liking it in hand. I was worried the reds were going to be too dark, but they look pretty much spot on. Anyway, to my mind, they look very good. They're just the right sort of colour. The blue looks really, really good. The blue paint, sort of a metallic blue, speckled, and the nice sort of white, the red, white and blue deco is really good. Magnus's face, one thing I'm slightly disappointed about is his face should be a slightly darker grey than the rest of his body, the white parts. I can't quite make up my mind whether the faces are grey here or whether it's just because the face is matte and the rest is gloss, but it does look marginally darker, if I'm honest. Looking at it now in this light, it does look slightly grey, a very light grey compared to the white. I would have liked it to be a little bit darker, but there's enough of a differentiation between the two that I can sort of satisfy my toon accuracy craving. So let's give you a quick spin around, 360. There he is from the side. As you'll note, he's got a really clean profile. I mean, slightly big legs, but that's actually accurate. But his backpack is lovely and compressed there. There's hardly anything for such a big bot. And he's very, very clean on the back here as well. As you can see, really, really nice, sleek lines. Does have a tendency to pop open on panels. That's one thing I've noticed, but I'll sort that out in a minute. But yeah, other than that, I mean, honestly, this is looking pretty good, isn't it, for such a big bot with a lot of engineering required to convert him from one mode to the other. And obviously they haven't gone the Fans Toys route of basically making it a shell former like the G1 toy, like a power suit that the smaller bot wears. They've integrated the trailer with the bot, and I think it really, really does look good. But anyway, we'll talk more about that in a moment. Just give me a second. I'm going to bring in his accessories. So first things first is his gun. Now, it's nicely molded. It looks the part, but they've chosen a very odd colour. Now, Magnus's gun should be sort of a grey, maybe sort of a bluish grey, but they've gone for this really odd purple. I mean, that's flat out purple. That's not grey. It's very odd. I mean, the gun looks good, don't get me wrong. It still looks fine, and it doesn't really look terrible when it's with him, if you're using it with him. But it does look weird if you know what the gun should look like. And just by way of comparison, I want to bring in MP22's gun. And you can just see the difference there. That's night and day, isn't it? That is far more akin to what I would be expecting. In terms of design as well, I think this is probably marginally more screen accurate in terms of proportions and the overall design. But yeah, I don't know. I don't really know what they were thinking with this. It doesn't look bad in and of itself, but I definitely prefer this. Sadly, this can't tab into his hand because you'll see the tabs are much bigger. But thankfully, because he does have such sort of articulated hands, he can hold this gun. So I have tested that briefly. If you if you did want to use MP22's gun, if you have MP22, you could do that. Anyway, I'll get rid of that. So that's you know, it's there, it looks fine, but it's just a very, very odd colour choice. But to be fair, it could have been a lot worse. They could have gone for some weird colours on the main bot itself. So I'm quite glad it's limited only to the sort of weapon. As I said, I don't have the transparent, the sort of the translucent eyes that you swap out to do the LED function, so I can't show those. What I do have is the almost human figure from that episode where they became almost human. Obviously, we got one with their Springer. Sorry, it's not really focusing very well on the camera, is it? Come on. Come on. Will you focus? Will you? I don't know. No, I can't tell that it is or not. There you go, maybe. Yeah, that's better. Yeah, I mean, it is what it is. I don't know if you can see, but again, it's probably no good from this distance. But talking of eyes, not LEDs, but the eyes on this thing are bloody cross-eyed. I'm still not sure that is focusing. It's very irritating when you can't get a camera to focus on something. How's that? There we go. That's better, isn't it? Yeah, there you go. It's so strange. Look at the goofy eyes on that guy. Yeah, I mean, it's painted okay. It looks all right. It's obviously a static figure. It's not articulated in any real way. Yeah, I guess it's nice they've done this. I am hoping that because they've done it for Springer and Magnus, that we are going to see an attempt at a Rodimus and an RC from X-Transbots that will exceed what we've previously had. I mean, we're well overdue for a Rodimus, aren't we, from a third party, a toon-accurate Rodimus. And I would like to see a better RC as well, because no one's really nailed it yet. Moving on, just excuse me while I try and retrieve these things. We have some alternate faces. Now, they're a bit of a mixed bag. Well, I say a mixed bag. They're a mixed bag for my preferences, because X-Transbots has sort of, I guess, tried to appease two camps. So if we look at the first one, I'll show you the face on the main bot. I mean, you can probably see it from here. It's a very neutral, stoic sort of looking face. What we get as separate faces are these things. Now, let's see if that will focus. Any joy? There we go. So obviously here we have a kind of, I guess, a dismayed, worried looking face, and that looks pretty nice. That's a nice look. You know, you can almost sort of envisage the scenes in the movie where he's looking a bit perturbed there, can't you? Another one you get is this speaking face, which again, come on, you stop being a swine. Oh, this is so irritating. Give me a second. Come on. Focus. No. This one doesn't want to focus. Oh, there we go. Right, it's done it now. Yeah, that's almost his, I can't deal with that now face, isn't it? It's another nice sculpt. I do like it. So it's quite expressive. But then in a departure from the early renders and from even the manual, the additional three faces deviate slightly in so much as they've decided to give him a goatee, which is something he had in some episodes of season 3, but didn't really have in the movie at all, or in every episode of season 3. It was one of those kind of, I guess maybe the ACOM episodes where they just went, oh, we'll decide to colour our bots however the hell we want. I personally don't like it, and I wish they'd stuck without the goatee, the non-goatee look. Just so you had the option of all the faces, because I do like this shouting face, but I don't like the goatee. But I guess, at least those who do like it have got the option of 3 faces as well, because the other 2 remaining faces are also goateed. You have here a slightly smiling face. You see again with the silver goatee, that looks pretty good. maybe Daniel's just executed his first exosuit jump and he's looking happy. And finally, we have, I guess, another neutral face, this time with the goatee. Again, not my favourite, but, you know, I can live with it if I did want to use these poses, but I'm probably going to stick with the sort of stoic Magnus face that comes stock anyway. So I'm not too bothered. My favourite three faces are the ones without the goatee, so I'm happy with that. And as you can see, they're kind of a matte colour, which is why they do look slightly different to the white gloss elsewhere. Okay, so moving on then, that's what we get. When I bring him closer, I'll show you the face that he's wearing at the moment, but you can probably see it from this distance anyway. So that's kind of the aesthetics of the figure. You know, I think it looks very good, and the accessories are pretty good for what they are, albeit some slight odd colour choices there on the weapon. But what I want to get into is the articulation, because obviously the MP-22 wasn't terrible, but it wasn't great. And I mean, I'll do a comparison with MP-22 in a bit, just so you can see the difference in size and bulk and all that kind of stuff. But I think we should probably just do a quick articulation roundup, shouldn't we? So starting from the very top, we have a pretty limited head tilt up and down. There's really not much in it. I always feel like these are going to break. They are a prime candidate to break. They're very thin and sort of feel fragile. But yeah, you can see it doesn't really get much up and down. The head can go full 360 if you want, which is good. And you also get a reasonable amount of sort of head tilt. So he can look a little bit quizzical if you want him to do so. And if you combine that with sort of the head up and down, you can get a little bit more out of it. And yeah, it looks pretty good. You know, I would like it to have more range looking up and down, but there's sort of enough, if you know what I mean. Moving on, let's bring him slightly closer so you can see. You don't really need to see the whole face, do you, for this? Maybe I'll move the camera up while I do this section, just so you can see the top. It's a problem when you review these big bots. It's very difficult to get the camera in this confined space I've got anyway, into a position where it looks okay. I want to point out here, there's a joint here that can compress if you want to bring his arms closer to the body. But when I tried that, it got stuck. So the screw in that's attached, that holds this piece together, got stuck inside. Again, a tolerance issue, I think. One side did, the other didn't. So I'm not going to demonstrate that because I had to take the whole arm apart in order to fix that prior to filming. Again, I think it's just a tolerance thing. It is designed to go in and out. It's just, it gets stuck, you know, and to be fair, you're going to be utilizing this joint most of the time anyway, so it makes sense to keep it pulled out so you can move the arm. So speaking of that, the arm is on a soft ratchet and you can do a full 360 with it, which is good. That's what you would want. You also have, you know, given his design, it's another soft ratchet, but it's a fair range of motion. I mean, it obviously hits that, so you can't go any higher. But much like the series, and he did do this in the series, he has another joint here, which is on a hard ratchet, which allows him more outward movement. So you can get out to 90 without breaking the sculpt there, and you can even get a little bit beyond and just slightly break that sculpt there. So you do get a decent range of motion, but you know, sort of out to 90 there is pretty good. There is sadly no butterfly joint. I think maybe perhaps you could disassemble this piece at the back, which is part of the transformation joint, and then this whole piece here would swing out, but that would completely break the sculpt in a way that, you know, I think goes beyond just cheating it. So yeah, so no butterfly joint, which is slightly disappointing, but not the end of the world. These missiles are on an armature and they can be rotated, moved down, etc. They do have a tendency to unclip and fall down. They don't really lock, but you know, if you're careful, they're all right, and they look the part. if we move down, he has a single jointed elbow to 90. If you're feeling brave, there is a secondary joint. It does require a scary amount of force to engage. I actually took the arm apart because I couldn't get it to do it, again, prior to review. And I was amazed by what I found. Basically, there are a series of bumps on the top and bottom which sit into little grooves, but they are obviously raised to a point where it's just too much friction, and even sort of sanding it down a bit didn't really make much difference. And the left arm is worse on mine than the right. The right arm's slightly better, but essentially this pulls out as part of transformation. But if you push and hope for the best, there we go. It does reveal a secondary joint there, which, as you can see, gets him up past 90. What that also does is you'll see it reveals more of the white compared to this arm and gives him more of that gorilla arm look. And in fact, because of the transformation joint, this actually extends another notch as well, as you can see there. And gives him even more of a gorilla arm look. Now, this is what he looked like in some of the promo pics, which is what made people think he had super, super long gorilla arms, as opposed to, I think, reasonably cartoon accurate. I mean, they're slightly longer than they would be if they were anatomically correct for a human, but he's not human. And if you look at his animation model, his arms are longer than most bots just because of the way he's designed. So I think it's actually quite a neat little trick that XTB have done there. They've afforded the opportunity of additional articulation, but they've managed to hide it in such a way as that if you don't want to use it, you can basically push the joint back, or push this mechanism back together, and there you are. You're back to how it looks out of the box, and it doesn't look too bad in terms of the length. I mean, you may argue that the hand should maybe finish about here rather than the fingers down here, but it's not really that far off, and it doesn't look terrible. So that is a neat little option there, a neat little choice they've made. Also, forgot to mention, sorry, it does have a bicep swivel, as you would expect. Right, next up, let's move these arms up a bit just to get them out of the way. He has a waist rotation, as you'd expect. That can go all the way around if you need it to, but he also has an ab crunch. Now, the armature, the assembly it's on, doesn't feel the sturdiest to me, so I'm slightly worried that it won't last up if you're trying to manipulate it too much. But it was also quite loose on mine, so whenever I picked him up by the top, it would disengage. I've tightened it as much as I can without... well, to the point where I feel like if I tighten it anymore, I'm going to crack the plastic, so I don't want to go anymore. And it's marginally better now. But initially, you can engage that joint, and you can give him, a reasonable ab crunch to there without breaking the sculpt. Once you go further and you expose that armature, it does start to look a bit odd. I mean, it actually comes out a long way. If you want, you can get him all the way over like that. And he does become a bit top heavy then. But it also means that he can go all the way back. Again, that does break the sculpt somewhat if you're looking at it from that point of view. But, it's there if you need it. You also, on this, and this is where it's a bit squeaky, you get a bit of a teapot effect, should you want it. It's not anywhere near as good as the one we get with MP24. It just, as I say, it feels like X-Transbots quality, where I'm not entirely sure if that's going to sort of last through multiple engagements of that. So I'm probably not going to use it much, but it is there if you want it, and you can get some reasonable poses out of it. But to be fair, most of what you're going to want out of an ab crunch is like that, isn't it? Especially with a bot of this size, you're not going to want it to be, it's not going to need to be huge. That's probably enough. And, with the back, likewise, maybe like that. So, it's there, it looks okay. Quite happy they've included it, but just, again, it feels like the quality control isn't quite there. Okay, so let me just move the camera down again, because it's going to be easier to show you the lower half with it down a little bit. We have here hip skirts, which are manual, no auto engagement here, no spring loading mechanisms. Also probably worth mentioning that the butt flap is one piece and can lift all the way up like that. Let's just demonstrate. So we get friction out to the side, and he's got very heavy legs because he's got die cast in here, and you know, they're just big pieces, but it does hold well. You know, you can kick all the way out to the side there without, you know, and I don't want to shake too much because, you know, shake test people do a lot, don't they? But who the hell's shaking their figures in normal use? But it does hold up pretty well. Move that down. You have a relatively soft ratchet out to the front there, which you can get up to 90. Yeah, probably just 90, not really above it. Oh, I've broken his knee there. Oh, I would have if he was human. And also to the back, you get another 90 to the back as well, which, you know, fair enough. That's pretty good motion. And you get the same obviously on that side, so I'm not really going to bother demonstrating it on both sides. And there you can see again, he's fallen forward, which is what happens with that ab crunch, annoyingly. Right, so that is that. You also obviously get the customary thigh rotation. Again, if you move it out, you get slightly more. When it's close into the leg, you don't get quite as much rotation, but there's certainly as much there as you probably would need. The knee is interesting as well. At first I thought it was a single jointed knee because it goes all the way back there to 90, but in here, if you are brave and you push a little bit further, you'll see that there's a secondary joint that engages. It does have a tendency to unlock the leg though, and you'll see there's a little bit of blue there that's popped out, and you can get above or beyond 90 degrees, which is quite useful, and that will just clips back together like that afterwards. The final piece of articulation, or the final pieces of articulation, are, well, actually I've missed one, I'll have to go back to. Yeah, on the feet here, you have very deep ankle rocker there. So you can get a lot of that. Obviously does slightly break the sculpt, but you've got enough that you can get them into some decent A stances. And while there's no forward toe tilt, there is plenty of sort of back toe tilt, you know, heel tilt, call it what you will. So you can move that back and you could have one leg forward, etc. I did want to say, actually, like the arms, there is a scary piece here. You probably see on there, there's a lip that locks into a groove underside there, which comes locked in by standard. It is very tight initially, and I think I was going to break something, so I tend to leave it just unpegged now. It doesn't need to be pegged back in. You can leave it like that. It's just sitting there, especially if you're going to use the joint, you might as well just leave it out. Also worth noting that no faux wheels on this guy, but I'll do more about that in the comparison. Yeah, the bit I missed are the hands. Sorry, stupid. Pretty decent hands, as I said at the top of the review. Each finger individually articulated. Well, they're on a base pin there at the first knuckle. Then each finger is individually articulated. The palm, or the back, you know, the back of the hand can move as well on another pin there, and then the thumb is on a ball joint with an articulated knuckle on a pin there. So you get some decent range of motion out of the hands as well. And as I said, they're big enough and dexterous enough that they can grasp weapons that don't fit into the tab slot as well. So there you go. That's all the articulation. I'm going to move him back just because what I want to do now is bring in a comparison, a bot for comparison. The first one anyway, and it is trusty old MP-22, and there he is. And if I thought Commander Stack was a chonky boy, well, MP-22 is the chonkiest, isn't he? Yeah, visually for me, no contest here. Commander Stack just destroys MP-22 in every way. I mean, I see people might say that MP-22's arms are a better length, which I guess you can make a case for, but they are nowhere near as toon-accurate. They're way too bulky. They're too long here, too short here. The proportions aren't correct. You know, the legs just way better proportioned on Stack. You know, the front as well just looks much better on Stack. I would say as well, arguably, you know, well, not arguably, the head sculpt is much better on Stack as well. It's really, though, when you get to the rear of the figures that you see the huge difference between them. There were the faux wheels I was talking about. Sorry, on MP22. They, if you haven't seen it, they rotate. But the wheels on Stack are actually smaller than this, so they don't actually look too bad. It would have been a nice thing to have, but it's not the end of the world. But yeah, it's really when you look at him from the back that you appreciate the engineering and the design that's gone into this guy, and how much more toon accurate he really is. It's just a great looking figure all round. You know, just really does look the part. And I'm quite lucky in that I've got one that's fairly well painted. Only got a couple of minor issues, which I'm not really going to get too worked up about. So yeah, honestly, really nice looking figure there from the back, whereas MP22 is a kind of a nightmare, isn't it? MP22, on the other hand, very easy to transform both ways. I also much prefer the scale. MP22 was always way too big for my money, whereas Stack is a lot better in that respect. He's still a little bit too tall, I feel, but much better. One thing I did miss, obviously I keep missing things. He obviously, Magnus here, as you can see through the translucent windows, has a matrix in there. Well, not to be left out, Stack also has a matrix, and it's housed in his chest. What I really love actually is how toon accurate it is, because whereas this is translucent, they've gone opaque on the outsides, but then just like he is in the movie, they've gone the extra mile and they've painted the doors with the opaque windows inside to sort of show that this is supposed to be the interior of his cab transformed. That's a really lovely detail. I think looks really good. Very accurate to the movie. The matrix is a bit plasticky, if I'm being honest. You can see it from here. It looks nice and shiny. That's the wrong way around. But yeah, it does open slightly. But it does, you know, you compare this to one of the die-cast matrices that come with MP44, MP10, Sovereign or whatever, and yeah, it doesn't really hold up, but it does look good, and it's better than the one that comes with the Masterpiece rod, I must put it that way. It doesn't really fit in the chest snugly, but once you've got it in, you can see it just kind of falls out a bit. But you know, if you close the doors quickly, you'll keep it in there, and then you just lock it back in like that, and Robert is your dad's brother. So yeah, what was I going to do now? I wanted to bring in a couple of things for comparison, actually, for size comparison. I think it's always very important to have a prime. So this is my KO MP44, just because it's the one I had to hand. And that way you can see, sort of, I'll drop it down a little bit more. You can see scale-wise how he lines up. I think slightly too short, as I said. I think the top of Prime's head should come up to sort of halfway at Magnus's face, but it actually comes up to almost the top of his chest then, just a little bit under. But it's acceptable, and it's certainly better than this, where, you know, this is a good half a head taller again. So, you know, and just the fact that his overall proportions are much better really helps as well. Let me just get rid of MP22. And I will put Prime next to Magnus there, so you can sort of see what they look like side by side. I think they look pretty good, you know. And those of you who prefer a third-party Prime, here he is with a slightly different figure. You can see there for scale with TE01. That's version 3 of TE01, and again, looks pretty good. And I think both are very good versions of Prime, and I do think Magnus looks good and looks, you know, he scales well with them. As I said, I'd prefer his face to be a bit darker, maybe not quite as dark as Prime's, but a little bit darker than it is. But it's yeah, I may, if I can be bothered, do a bit of an insert here. Haven't decided yet, but if I can be bothered to get all of my movie characters out, now I have a full movie complement, I might do a lineup of him with Springer, Hot Rod, RC, Cup, Blur, Rodimus, etc. But that's only if I can brave taking things out of my display cabinets. Other than that, though, what would I say? Let me just get Prime out of the way, so we can focus on the guy at hand. Let's bring him back front and center. So yeah, what do I think? Honestly, it's very X-Transbots. So it looks really, really good. I think the bot mode, they've knocked it out of the park in terms of the aesthetics. I think it's a really fantastic looking piece. I love the colours, I love the proportions, even the gorilla arms, quote unquote gorilla arms, don't really bother me. I like the way, you know, even things like this, they come mistransformed out of the box. They're more, they come, I don't know if I can do it. So they come like this out of the box. You can see that that's how MP22 looked with this red bit visible, but you can fold them behind and clip them in, and then it makes for a much better uniform look. So just things like that, they've gone the extra mile to allow him to look as toon accurate as possible while still being a viable piece of transforming engineering. I really do like the way it looks. I think it's a great looking figure. What lets it down, as usual, is the QC. There are a few things on it that just don't feel great. They do feel very fragile. It's why I was reticent to transform it, as I said. Those extending arm pieces don't feel great, particularly the ab crunch joint. The armature does not feel very good, does not feel very durable. Some of the plasticky bits feel a little bit brittle, but not terrible, but just obviously there's actually a fair bit of die cast in him, so that feels quite good. And then the rest of it is not amazing. Yeah, but I am kind of nitpicking in terms of bot mode. As I said, I've seen some stuff online that makes me think that I would really regret transforming it, which is what I would mark this figure down on. I did sort of give it a go in preparation, you know, for this sort of first impressions review. But my first impression was, I'm going to break the bloody thing. So I kind of quit as I got halfway through the arms and trying to untab the back. It was all very tightly, you know, even using a plastic tool like this, I felt like I was going to break it. And I just, you know, it was a bit like Fans Toys Jabber, where I started the transformation and I got a few minutes into it and just thought, nah, I'm backing out of this before I regret it. And then was very thankful when I saw that I'd done that, because people's Jabbers were breaking quite routinely, because that was a terribly designed figure. Yeah, again, apologies if you were expecting the alt mode review, but hopefully, you know, if you've watched this and stuck with me, then you're like me and you're a bot mode person anyway, and this is giving you what you need to make an informed purchasing decision. This is definitely the best MP Magnus at the moment. Fans Toys, seen the renders, I'm unimpressed, to be honest. Well, it's not that I'm unimpressed, it's just that I'm not moved to think that it's better than this. I don't think it looks better proportionally. I think it's a bit of a hybrid stylistically as well. It's not completely toon. They've obviously gone for that kind of powered armor upgrade for the white Magnus. You know, it snaps on, so they've actually cheated a bit. It's a bit of a shell former, isn't it? So they don't have to worry about the proportions and transforming as much. But I still think it looks inferior to this in terms of proportions. I've no doubt the materials and the quality control will be better, but X-Transbots are making strides in that department. I have high hopes for their Galvatron. I mean, I am desperate for their Galvatron to be good, because it's one of my favourite characters, and I love, as much as I love Sovereign, it's not quite toon enough, whereas their Galvatron looks, you know, Abaddon looks amazing and will be a brilliant counterpart for this guy. So I'm hoping that arrives in December like it's slated to. I have a feeling it will slip until next year, to Jan or Feb maybe, but I can't wait to get my hands on that and pair him up with Magnus here. So yeah, I wholeheartedly recommend this if you're a bot mode guy, or bot mode person, I should say. If you do like to transform your figures a lot, maybe this isn't the one for you. You might want to stick with MP22 or wait for Fans Toys offering to see what that brings. But you might have different you might have a different experience than I did, or certainly the ones I've seen online. And you know, I've seen plenty of people transforming it without issue. So you know, I just err on the side of caution with these things. I don't want to pay 150, 160 quid for something and then have it break on me the first time, when I'm just not interested in the alt mode for this guy that much. So anyway, that's about it for this review. I think my next review is going to be hopefully along fairly soon, and that's going to be the toon reissue of Ultra Magnus, the Commander Modesty himself, Skylinks. I've never had that before. I just kind of a bit of an impulse purchase, but I'm looking forward to that. I've sort of got it out of the box, and it seems like a nice, solid, sturdy figure or figures. I also have Fans Toys Jive on the way. It should be on the way soon, so I'm hoping to get that one done before Christmas as well, and then maybe Abaddon as well if it does arrive. I have Parkour on order as well. I think I might give Takara Trailbreaker a miss. I'm just not feeling it. Colours aside, I think the look of the Fans Toys figure is better, and I can kind of live with the fact that the legs are light grey instead of dark grey, and you know, it's not quite as articulated as the Takara. But anyway, thanks for sticking with me for this video. Thanks for watching, and it just remains for me to say until next time, take care, and if I don't speak to you before, have a great Christmas and a Happy New Year.